Question is, I'm struggling with being honest with my husband. I'm a pathological liar and have been working on changing my ways, but it hasn't been going well. I think it's really important to talk about a few things before we dive into that. Now, pathological lying, or individuals who struggle with this, one thing that is important to note is that they actually don't even realize that that's what they're doing most of the time. So it's more of an automated response. It's not purposeful, it's just automated, right? And so sometimes they recognize what they're doing, but it's just like clockwork. You've ever been talking and something just comes out of your mouth and you're like, that just came right out. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I have. And so what do? We recognize that that's not something that I necessarily wanted to come out. So we should probably work on not doing that next time, right? That thought process of saying, hey, I didn't really like this, so maybe I need to work on changing it. Most times, pathological liars do not take the time to realize that or to make that connection. And so when they're in a relationship with people who don't struggle with that, it's very difficult for them to understand, why can't you just stop? Which leads me to another point that's super important. If you wouldn't tell somebody who struggles with an addiction or who struggles with anxiety and stress to just stop, then you probably shouldn't recommend that to a pathological liar. It's important to recognize that this is not an actual diagnosis in the DSM-5. And for those of you who aren't aware, the DSM-5 is a diagnostic manual that therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists use to diagnose different mental health disorders. And so that is not in there. Because it's not a DSM diagnosis, therapists don't really spend much time learning about how to treat this. When it comes to pathological lying, CBT has been shown to work because CBT is just cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a type of therapy that therapists use. And I'm not here to give you a lesson on all the different types of therapies, but I do want to educate you because some of you are interested in learning a little bit more. So I will put a little bit of that in there, but I won't bore you. I'll try not to. So CBT has been shown to help individuals with pathological lying. More specifically, a technique within CBT that's called habit reversal training. And it's essentially what the name says, right? You're learning how to reverse a habit that you have developed over time. And so with that kind of CBT technique, what happens is the individual works with a therapist or psychologist to learn not just what they're doing wrong and hurtful to others, which is lying, and how it impacts them and don't do it again. It's not just that. They go a little bit deeper into that. They actually work with you to find out, why is it that you pathologically lie, right? Where did it start? How did you develop this? Right? And what continued to perpetuate the notion of, you know what, this is not necessarily a harmful thing, or this is not necessarily a bad thing, right? So you're really getting to the root of, when did this start? Have you always done this? What has triggered it? Why? And also, what is it that you're gaining from it? Because at the end of the day, we do things because there's something to be gained at the end of it, whether we recognize that or not. Let's say, drink coffee, whether you like it or not. Maybe it was a cultural thing and you just go with the culture. You may not necessarily like coffee that's caffeinated, so you do decaf. It's just what you saw growing up, so that's why you do it. But we don't take the time to actually dig that deep into it. It's the same thing with pathological lying, just on a totally different level, right? You don't take the time to think about, well, why do you actually have this addiction, right? It could be considered an addiction if you think about it, but it's not a DSM, so I can't officially say that. And then when you get to the root cause, then your therapist is able to work with you on ways that you can actually, like the title says, reverse that behavior. Instead, take time to pause in between that action of, you hear a question being asked and then you just blah, 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 and it's a lie, right? You take that process a lot slower so that you can actually work on not doing it as much. Here are a few things that I want to leave you with as far as techniques to actually help. Now, I still recommend that you start with therapy. Small techniques, yes. They're simple enough, yes, which that's how I like it. I recommend somebody who hasn't run a marathon to just go out one day, buy some tennis shoes, and run 10 miles or whatever the case is. You wouldn't recommend that. That's excessive and is not going to help, and they probably won't make it, right? But you're going to say, start small. Run half a mile, then run and walk a mile, then run a mile, and then you work your way up, right? So whenever you start to work in therapy on any given struggle that you have, the recommendation should, and usually always is, to start simple and start small. Cognitively, as you do something simple that you're like, oh, why am I even paying for this? Why am I going to therapy for this? What? I've heard this before. Why do I need to? I want you, if you've been in that position, which I get, rightfully so, valid question. But if you've been in that position yourself, I want you to take 2 steps back, because you ended up in therapy for a reason, right? And even though it seems simple enough, have you been doing it? Hold on. Have you been doing it consistently? Let's be honest with ourselves here, right? And if the answer is no, that's okay. You're not far from many other people, right? However, the goal is to start small, and then cognitively what happens is your brain says, oh, I was able to do that consistently because it was so easy and so simple. I didn't really have to think about it much. After I got started, it became a habit. It became a pattern, right? So then you build confidence and you say, okay, well, let me try something a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult, a little bit more of a stretch. And then you realize, actually, that's not that hard. And you make it a part of your routine and you make it consistent. First technique is to learn how to silence negative thoughts about yourself. Part of the reason why some individuals lie pathologically could be to impress others. Fear of being judged, judgment, right? Shame. And so what you do is you lie so that you don't have to show your true self to the outside world, who will then judge you. And then you feel shame and guilt about it, right? Whether that's about your lifestyle, whether that's about the choices you make. I want you to actually call out the amount of times that you say negative, harmful, or hurtful things about yourself to yourself in your own mind, in your own thoughts. And I want you to say, oh, that's a negative thought. And just keep going. That's all I want you to do. That's all I want you to do. After like maybe the 5th time of saying, oh, that's a negative thought, you're going to catch on to a pattern here, which is that unprovoked, you're thinking about negative things about yourself way too often. And so in those instances, it's important to recognize it starts with us. And when we feel shame and we shame ourselves and guilt ourselves consistently, that is what we're going to admit to others, that we are ashamed, that we are guilty. And in order to hide that, you lie. The second technique is to, this is a little bit harder, but is to accept the consequences of your behaviors. And this is difficult because that's part of the reason why you lie, to run away from the shame and the guilt that may possibly happen with that person. That's a big may. When you learn to accept the consequences with small things, after you do that, okay, I know I've got to own up. This is my small exercise. This is my task that I gave myself that I'm going to do. You are admitting the truth. You're righting your wrong, but you're also accepting the consequences of your actions. Remember this. They can choose to be upset with you. They can choose to say, you know what, I really didn't appreciate that you do that. Next time, please don't do that. They have every right to respond like that. And honestly, that's a nice response, because some people take it the extra mile. And I've seen that. They probably need some therapy too. But, what we have to remember is we cannot control other people's actions based off of our actions, right? So we have an action, and that is lying. And then the person has a reaction to that. They are entitled to that. I want to pause on there because most of the lying comes from, I just don't want to feel bad about what I did, and I don't want them to see me as a mean person or whatever the case is. Get yourself out of the equation. It's not about you at this point. It is about the other person that you have hurt by lying. That's part of accepting the consequences of your actions. The next technique is to learn how to not omit details. Some people think if I just don't say anything, then I'm not necessarily lying. Incorrect. If there is important details to a scenario or situation that you are choosing to actively leave out, which means you are choosing to say, maybe they don't need to know this part. Lie. That's it. You have chosen to say, I'm gonna not share this. That's a choice. That's okay. It's still a lie. It is your responsibility if you say that you care about somebody. It is your responsibility to give them the full picture and then allow them the autonomy to choose what they want to do with 100% of the information, even if that means that their choice is something that you don't like. That's love. That's care. Genuine care for somebody. When you can say, you know what, the consequences of my actions means that you're probably going to make a decision that I don't like, but I love you enough to give you the full picture and then have you make your own decision. That is rare to find, but when you find that, because I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but I do not condone these things when it's a toxic situation. Abusive, toxic situations, absolutely not. These are only for situations where both partners are actively wanting and desiring and working on improving. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for your question. I have a few more questions that you guys have sent in, and I'm so appreciative, and I'm getting right to those to answer them. So stay tuned for the next few videos that I have for you guys. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.